during segregation, really up until the last couple of generations, our people were, for lack of a better term, stuck with each other. And because we were stuck with each other, with all of the white supremacy, all the deep racism and hypercapitalism surrounding us, there was this sense of collective purpose that drove education. So that teachers in our communities, the Benjamin Mazes and the Mary McLeod Bethunes, were venerated. Avery Institute in South Carolina, here in Washington, D.C., Dunbar High School, the former M Street School, Booker T. Washington in Atlanta, you name it, Vashon in St. Louis. These were the Phyllis Wheatley in Houston. These were the temples. And our children, our young people aspired to learn, not just for themselves, but for the race. When we fast forward to now, we now pass segregation, and Du Bois predicted this in 1960. He said, after desegregation, then Black people, y'all gonna have a real choice to make. What are you gonna be in a society when the laws have been equalized, and now you're going to have to decide deeper questions of race and culture? Because if you don't decide the questions of culture, you're going to disappear into a society that's going to use you for what it needs and leave you with no philosophy. And so what we see
when
now—
he said that, Dr. Carr, when he said that,
yes,
and I know there were like opponents to Du Bois, and I'm gonna chew up the meat, spit out the bone type of person. I'm gonna take what you give me that's good, and if I don't like your personality, whatever, we're gonna put that to the side. But I'm gonna get that knowledge.
yes.
Why wasn't there a groundswell of people to lean into that and say, okay, all right, let's put some coalitions together to make sure that what he's saying doesn't happen, because we're here now. And exactly what he said is where we are.
We are. Well, I mean, it's interesting. Well, first of all, he was like 90 years old when he said it.
Okay, so they're like
looking back over his life,
Okay.
Second of all, he gave a very famous speech. Well, not famous at all. Now that you mentioned, now this is actually the point you're raising, the critical point. The speech where he talked about this most concretely was a talk he gave in 1960 to Black social studies teachers on the campus of Johnson C. Smith College, now University in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the name of the speech was "Whither Now and Why." He said, what are we going to do now? And why are we going to do it? And it's so funny because his wife, Shirley Graham, was with him. And this was a conference of Black social studies teachers. And this was actually a speech he gave during the day. And the evening speech, the banquet speech, was Shirley Graham, his wife, an intellectual in her own right. So they tag teamed with this small group, but it was a small group. And he was telling them, this is during the time when you still had those incredible Black Educator Association, the Teachers and Educators Association, the American Teachers Association, cats like Horace Tate in Georgia, and every state in the South had a Black Teachers Association. So these Black social studies teachers are sitting there, and he's telling them, look, they're gonna come in, they're gonna take some of y'all because y'all are all master teachers, but then our children are gonna be trapped. The laws are going to change, and then we're going to lose our cultural purpose. So I think the reason that there wasn't a groundswell of support was really because in many ways, those teachers through the 60s, through the 70s now, because some of those people made it into the 1970s and 80s. I mean, I dare say that you, me, a lot of folks who listen to your show, who watch you on the various platforms, YouTube, and they had, if they're a certain age, they had some of these teachers. These are the fine Black teachers who survived during integration. And then those of us who were bused, they put them in a school. And this may have been the one or two Black teachers that the Black children used to go and congeal around. The sister would say, I'm not going to let you fail. What we see is if you touch her, you're going to find she goes back to this period Du Bois is talking about. But by then, they've been scattered. And then once they're scattered like that, the children who come into the schools in the 1990s, 2000, 2010, they are coming looking for high academic achievement, but the academic achievement is linked to individual success. The academic achievement is linked to making money and doing things that are important, very valuable. But Du Bois's point was, unless you're thinking collectively, unless you're thinking for the race, unless you're thinking I'm going to be a brilliant person who's going to contribute my skills to the race, then we're not going to be able to advance as a group. So now at places like Howard and Spelman and Morehouse and Fisk and North Carolina A&T, where I went to school, Tennessee State, Florida A&M, You see young people coming in who have the talent. That's no question. Who have the high test scores, who have the grade point averages, but who are looking at school very much like many of the high achieving white students are looking at. There are a couple of professors, one was at the University of Virginia. They wrote a book a few years ago called Academically Adrift. And what they said is the undergraduate experience in America has become a situation where young people come to college to build their network, to get the right internship, to make sure they have the right connections. And if they're sitting in class, it's not that the classes aren't interesting, but they want to know one thing: how is this class going to help me advance my individual interests, help me achieve my dreams, so to speak? Well, that's what Du Bois was afraid of in part. So I get students in my classes who are very bright, but who also are asking, well, how's this Africana studies going to help me? Or, and then, okay, do I have to read the whole book? Yeah, you have to read the whole. Well, why? I mean, what is it going to be on the test? These are questions we all asked over the years, but without the type of collective philosophy, intellectual work now has turned into almost like practical work. How is this going to help me achieve my individual goal? And I'll tell you, and finally, that's what I'll say, Du Bois was really afraid, but this is what he was afraid of. If you don't have a philosophy of life that builds on this notion that we're going to achieve something collectively, and one of his phrases, I love the way he put it, he said, this society will have us take our eyes from the stars and fix them on molasses and cornbread. And he said, and if that becomes the case, it's all vocational education. It's all job training education. I don't know why I have to think about Nina Simone. I don't know what I have to consider. I just want some music that makes me feel good. And I don't want to even stop and think too hard about Shirley Graham Du Bois or Eslanda Good Robeson. And that's the thing that I'm afraid we're really on the verge of losing.
Me too.